Joseph "Pinky" Hernandez was born in 1950 and rose to become one of the 5 top generals of Nuestra Familia. Hernandez was among the highest-ranking officers of the organization, issuing orders from inside the security housing unit at Pelican Bay State Prison, California's toughest correctional facility. The organization operated as a racketeering enterprise, dealing narcotics, committing burglaries and robberies, trafficking in illegal weapons, and ordering violent attacks both inside correctional facilities and on the streets of Northern California. Hernandez used an underground communications network to run offense operations from behind bars. Investigators learned that he had written approximately 75 coded letters to a female follower identified as Kaylin Santiago, who lived in Boise, Idaho. A search of her residence uncovered computer files and records of Nuestra Familia leadership and Aztec code names. In a February 2000 document, an FBI special agent noted that although many of the coded letters between Santiago and Hernandez could not be interpreted in their entirety, there was sufficient detail to show discussion of Nuestra Familia business, money transfers, and illegal communications which could ultimately lead to violence. The organization's leaders communicated through a sophisticated 3-way mailing address system with help from supporters on the outside. A leader housed in solitary confinement at Pelican Bay could send coded messages to an outside mailbox address set up by a follower, who then redirected the message to a second inmate housed in a separate unit. This allowed Hernandez and other leaders to coordinate offense activities, order attacks, and manage narcotics trafficking operations across multiple counties while locked in maximum security. Hernandez was investigated as part of Operation Black Widow, which began in The $5 million investigation turned up evidence that Nuestra Familia dealt narcotics, committed burglaries, robberies, and incidents where individuals were unalived and trafficked in illegal weapons. Investigators were so successful in persuading offense members to give evidence against their colleagues that had the case gone to trial, the government was prepared to have 24 former members and associates testify as prosecution witnesses. In September 2004, Hernandez, age 54, pleaded guilty in San Francisco to charges of operating the prison offense organization as a racketeering enterprise. He admitted to having participated in at least 2 incidents where individuals were unalived. In September 2005, Hernandez was sentenced to life in federal correctional facility without the possibility of parole. Hernandez, now in his late 50s, was transferred to the federal Supermax Correctional Facility in Florence, Colorado, along with the other top generals. Despite being housed in the federal system, investigators reported that incidents of violence increased and communication with the outside was established through cell phones smuggled into the correctional facility. Joseph "Pinky" Hernandez remains incarcerated in federal custody, removed from California but still connected to the organization he helped lead for decades.
Cornelio "Corny" Tristan was born in 1961 and became one of the 5 top generals of Nuestra Familia. Tristan, age 44, was identified by prosecutors as one of the top generals of Nuestra Familia, one of the state's largest prison gangs. Tristan was held at Pelican Bay State Prison in Crescent City, where he admitted ordering robberies and narcotics trafficking to finance the gang and conspiring in incidents where individuals were unalived. Tristan was a Nuestra Familia general who directed regiment commanders on the streets. Mendoza, a regiment commander in San Jose, was directed to set up his regiment by Tristan after Mendoza was released from correctional facility in April 2003. Mendoza gave part of the proceeds from his regiment's sales of methamphetamine and heroin to Tristan's wife, eventually totaling $70,000 to $80,000. Tristan promoted Mendoza to the highest Nuestra Familia rank of Category 3 in 2004. The organization operated with strict military hierarchy, with generals like Tristan running operations from inside maximum security correctional facilities, while paroled regiment commanders controlled street activities. While awaiting trial for 4 years, Tristan and other gang captains and generals continued to order offenses in Monterey County and other areas from a federal holding facility in Alameda County. The top leaders in custody at Alameda County were the last of 22 Nuestra Familia members and associates to plead guilty in a federal racketeering case that began 5 years earlier. FBI reports showed that the 5 leaders and other co-defendants moved to Alameda County were housed in neighboring cells, leased by the federal government, enabling easy communication. They were also often gathered together in holding cells and vans when transported to the federal courthouse in San Francisco. During one such trip, Morado and Tristan were able to directly scold their co-defendants over internal gang disagreements. In Pelican Bay's high-security units, the same level of communication would have required use of smuggled coded messages.
The organization dealt narcotics, committed burglaries and robberies, ordered incidents where individuals were unalived, and trafficked in illegal weapons. Tristan was part of a group whose top officers issued orders to their associates on the streets from inside the security housing unit at California's toughest lockup, Pelican Bay State Prison, GovInfo. The investigation called Operation Black Widow began in 1997 and turned up evidence that Nuestra Familia dealt narcotics, committed burglaries, robberies, and incidents where individuals were unalived and trafficked in illegal weapons.
In September 2004, Tristan, age 43, pleaded guilty in San Francisco to charges of operating the prison offense organization as a racketeering enterprise. He admitted to having participated in at least 2 incidents where individuals were unalived. In September 2005, Tristan was sentenced to life in federal correctional facility without the possibility of parole. Tristan, along with the 4 other top generals, was transferred to the federal supermaximum correctional facility in Florence, Colorado. Despite complaints from California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, all 5 were housed in the same supermax unit. The gang's new constitution said the 5 should still be respected as former leaders but stripped them of their power in California. Investigators said that stabbings increased and communication with the outside was established through cell phones smuggled into correctional facility. Cornelio "Corny" Tristan remains incarcerated in federal custody, removed from California but part of the leadership structure that continues to influence offense activities.
James Tibbs Moredo was born in 1948 and became one of the most powerful leaders in Nuestra Familia history. Moredo had been serving a life sentence in state correctional facility since 1977 for incidents involving being responsible for death and robbery. He became a leader of the powerful Nuestra Familia gang, which ran its operations out of the maximum security section of Pelican Bay Prison. Some law enforcement officials believe Moredo was the ringleader of the Mesa, or governing board of several generals, before he was indicted in 2001 in what was called the United States Justice Department's longest and costliest gang prosecution. Moredo, age 57, was identified by prosecutors as one of the top generals of Nuestra Familia. He admitted ordering robberies and narcotics trafficking to finance the gang and conspiring in incidents where individuals were unalived. The organization operated through a sophisticated communication system using coded messages called kites or willas that were concealed in legal mail or carried by inmates' spouses and girlfriends to smuggle out instructions for offenses. Federal efforts to disable Nuestra Familia failed to halt communication between its leaders. While awaiting trial for 4 years, Moredo and other gang captains and generals continued to order offenses in Monterey County and other areas from a federal holding facility in Alameda County. Within the past year and a half, before September 2004, Moredo married Crystal Anananangke, a 19-year-old woman from Salinas, while he awaited federal trial in a special Alameda County jail facility. Although Moredo was twice her age and serving life in correctional facility, marrying him meant the young woman would be taken care of financially by the gang. In January 2005, months after her visiting room romance blossomed into marriage, Crystal Moredo, then 20, was found passed away from a firearm discharge in a parked car on Hecker Pass Road just east of the line between Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz counties. California Correctional Facility investigators later found a message smuggled between gang leaders indicating that Moredo, the general called Tibbs, had sanctioned the incident. The note explained that she was taken from life because she was no longer functioning for the gang. Friends said she had wanted to spend more time with her infant son and had tired of delivering messages and money for the general and his associates. In September 2004, Moredo, age 49, pleaded guilty to federal racketeering charges. He admitted to having participated in at least 2 incidents where individuals were unalived. Moredo pleaded guilty to federal racketeering conspiracy charges that involved 2 incidents where individuals passed away and narcotics trafficking. In 2005, Moredo was sentenced to life in federal correctional facility after pleading guilty to federal racketeering conspiracy charges. Moredo, age 59, along with the 4 other top generals, was transferred to the federal supermaximum correctional facility in Florence, Colorado. The gang's new constitution stripped the 5 of their power in California but said they should still be respected as former leaders. James Tibbs Moredo remains incarcerated in federal custody, removed from California, where he once controlled one of the state's most dangerous offense organizations. David D.C. Cervantes was born in 1948 and became one of the most powerful leaders in Nuestra Familia history. Cervantes was one of 3 generals who sat atop the Nuestra Familia organizational structure. As the sole member of the General Advocate's Office, Cervantes oversaw member discipline, a role that included deciding when members should be attacked or taken from life for violating gang rules. Cervantes was responsible for enforcing discipline,
including approving violent actions against members deemed disloyal or in violation of gang rules. The organization operated as a criminal enterprise that engaged in incidents where individuals were unalived, attempted incidents, narcotics distribution, and money laundering both inside California correctional facilities and on the streets. The trial evidence established that Cervantes was responsible for receiving complaints containing allegations of member wrongdoing within Nuestra Familia, appointing investigators to look into alleged wrongdoing of gang members, accepting and modifying findings and recommendations of the investigators, and forwarding final recommendations regarding member discipline to a 7-member General Council. Cervantes also was the regimental commander of the Nuestra Familia street gangs in Kings County, where he was responsible for overseeing, managing, directing, and otherwise controlling offense activity conducted by Norteño street gang members. The jury found Cervantes responsible for the conspiracies to cause the passing of Lorenzo Lencho Guzman in 2015 and John Shanks Reyna in 2019, as well as the attempted incidents involving Antonio Sumbras Villagrana in 2015, John Kangknockers Musquiz in 2016, and Matt Rocker in 2019. These incidents were part of the organization's enforcement of its strict code and its control over territory and members. Anyone who violated the rules or showed disrespect to leadership faced violent consequences that Cervantes had the power to approve or deny. Cervantes, according to authorities, was one of 3 Nuestra Familia generals who controlled the gang, along with Antonio Chuco Guillen and James Con Joe Perez, the alleged general of prisons. Cervantes and Perez were both indicted in 2021, along with dozens of other Nuestra Familia and Norteño members, as part of a federal investigation into both gangs. The investigation stemmed from a 5-year effort by the FBI that resulted in the indictment of 54 Nuestra Familia members and associates, including defendants both on the streets and in California state correctional facilities. The trial followed 12 weeks of testimony from more than 50 witnesses and presentation of dozens of wiretapped phone calls that revealed a lucrative and violent offense enterprise with a presence in every Bay Area county. In October 2024, a federal jury found Cervantes guilty of racketeering for his role as a senior member of the Nuestra Familia offense enterprise. Cervantes, age 76, faced a maximum statutory sentence of life in correctional facility. In June 2025, Cervantes was sentenced to 120 months, which is 10 years, in federal correctional facility. United States Attorney CRAH Misakian stated that the brutal violence and narcotics trafficking that this offense enterprise ran from within state correctional facilities touched every county in the Bay Area. With these sentences, 40 gang leaders and associates have now been convicted and brought to justice for the violence they caused inside and outside correctional facility walls. FBI Special Agent in charge Sanjay Varmani said the sentencing of Cervantes and other top Nuestra Familia gang leaders marks the final chapter in the successful dismantling of one of the most violent and entrenched prison gangs operating in California. David D.C. Cervantes, now 76 years old, will spend the next decade in federal custody, removed from the offense organization he helped lead for years. Antonio Chuco Guillen was born in 1964 and became one of the most powerful figures in Nuestra Familia history. Guillen commanded the criminal enterprise from within a secure facility at Pelican Bay State Prison up north in Crescent City, where he was serving a life sentence for being responsible for death. Guillen was the highest ranking among 3 gang generals, all housed at Pelican Bay. He was described as the granddaddy of the Norteños in California. At the time of trial, Antonio Chuco Guillen was the general in Pelican Bay State Prison in charge of Nuestra Familia street regiments. When a member named Ramirez was due for release from correctional facility in March 2005, guards caught him with a kite that included a rewritten Nuestra Familia constitution and a message from Guillen regarding the loss of authority of the Nuestra Familia generals who had been relocated to federal correctional facilities. According to law enforcement, a kite is a communication between inmates in microretting. Communication is essential to maintain the Nuestra Familia organization in and out of custody. After his release from correctional facility, Ramirez contacted regiment leaders and formed his own regiment in Santa Clara County as he had been instructed by Guillen. This demonstrated Guillen's continued control over operations even while locked in maximum security. Some kites alluded to orders from Guillen. The Nuestra Familia gang, based on evidence from captured kites, even had an internal code of conduct. In one case, a gang member who threatened a man in front of the man's wife and children was ordered by gang leaders to pay a $500 fine. The organization operated with military discipline, dealing narcotics, committing robberies, and ordering violent attacks against anyone who violated gang rules. Guillen was identified as one of the 3 generals of the gang's leadership council, along with David D.C. Cervantes and James Conjo Perez. All were indicted for racketeering charges in September 2021. Both Guillen and Samuel Luna pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy involving incidents where individuals were targeted to be unalived. Plots that authorities said were only thwarted because federal investigators were secretly listening as the two talked on their contraband correctional facility cell phones. The attempted incidents stemmed from alleged conspiracies that were intercepted through the wiretap investigation. In all cases, the individuals targeted were incarcerated in jails or correctional facilities when they were targeted and moved to a secure housing unit before they could be harmed. One typical example of an incriminating conversation was Guillen allegedly telling a co-conspirator in 2019 to make sure you have 2 seasoned solditos on him that know how to take care of business, referring to an intended target. All the individuals were targeted for violating gang rules, anything from dealing narcotics with rival gang members to someone who was targeted for allegedly causing the passing of a fellow Norteno without authorization. In October 2023, Guillen, age 58, was sentenced by United States District Judge Juan Gonzalez Rogers to 175 months in federal correctional facility, which equals 14.5 years. Guillen was already serving life in state correctional facility for violent offenses, but federal prosecutors hoped the federal sentence would isolate him and inhibit his influence over Nuestra Familia, a prison gang that runs the massive network of Norteno gangs in northern and central California. Guillen received a prison term of 175 months for racketeering conspiracy, with additional findings for incidents where individuals were targeted to be unalived and attempted incidents. Antonio Chuco Guillen now serves his federal sentence removed from the California correctional facility system where his influence was strongest, but still connected to the organization he helped lead for decades. Samuel Luna was born in 1975 and became a high-ranking member of Nuestra Familia. Luna was identified as one of the inner council members that rounded out the 7-member leadership structure along with the 3 generals. All were indicted for racketeering charges in September 2021. The indictment charged 17 defendants with racketeering conspiracy, including acts involving incidents where individuals were targeted to be unalived, robbery, narcotics trafficking, and money laundering. The indictment cataloged offenses allegedly directed by the Nuestra Familia's command structure incarcerated in California correctional facilities. Luna, age 48, and Antonio Guillen were sentenced by United States District Judge Juan Gonzalez Rogers to 175 months in federal correctional facility. Both men pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy involving plots where individuals were targeted to be unalived, that authorities said were only thwarted because federal investigators were secretly listening as the two talked on their contraband correctional facility cell phones. Both men were already serving life in state correctional facility for violent offenses, but federal prosecutors hoped the federal correctional facility sentence would isolate them and inhibit their influence over Nuestra Familia, a prison gang that runs the massive network of Norteno gangs in northern and central California. The federal investigation included a wiretap which intercepted calls where dues from various area regiments were discussed. In one call, co-defendants Samuel Luna and Eric Zarat allegedly discussed how Fox had paid around $4,500 while $1,500 was collected from the East Bay, $6,000 had come in from Fresno, and $6,000 from Contra Costa County. This showed how Luna was directly involved in overseeing the financial operations of Nuestra Familia, collecting tens of thousands of dollars in monthly dues from Northern regiments across Northern California. The money came mostly from narcotics trafficking proceeds that were funneled into the organization's bank. In January 2019, with a high-ranking Nuestra Familia member named Samuel Luna, two co-defendants allegedly conspired to cause the passing of a Norterno who is referred to as EC in court records. They talked about his location in a county detention facility, selected someone to carry out the attack, and discussed how EC needed to be hit on sight. The attempted incidents stemmed from alleged conspiracies that were intercepted through the wiretap investigation. In all cases, the individuals targeted were incarcerated in detention facilities or correctional facilities when they were targeted and moved to a secure housing unit before they could be harmed. Court records exposed turmoil within the Norterno and Nuestra Familia gangs. In one case where the prison gang's leadership distributed literature to justify a stabbing, a 2019 stabbing occurred after the wiretap was finished. The person involved, a well-respected Norterno in Pleasant Valley State Prison, was stabbed multiple times with a shank, allegedly on the orders of gang leaders. The man survived, and the stabbing caused a correctional facility riot between Nuestra Familia associates, leading to the gang's leadership distributing literature justifying the stabbing and calling the person treasonous. In October 2023, Luna, age 48, was sentenced to 175 months in federal correctional facility, which equals 14.5 years. Luna received a prison term of 175 months for racketeering conspiracy with additional findings for incidents where individuals were targeted to be unalived and attempted incidents. The sentencing marked the successful completion of the prosecution of Nuestra Familia leadership in the Northern District of California. 40 Nuestra Familia members and associates, including defendants both on the streets and in California state correctional facilities, have now been convicted and sentenced. Sammy Luna now serves his federal sentence isolated from the California correctional facility system where his influence was strongest, paying the price for his role in directing violent offenses and managing the financial operations of one of California's most dangerous prison gangs. Sheldon "Skip" Villanueva rose through the ranks of one of California's most dangerous prison gangs to become a captain in San Jose. He was a member of Nuestra Familia, a ruthless organization that controlled drug trafficking, extortion, and violence throughout Northern California. The gang started in the prisons in the 1960s but quickly spread to the streets, where Nuestra Familia had a military-style structure with generals, captains, and soldiers. They had a written constitution. They demanded absolute loyalty. Breaking the rules meant death. Villanueva knew this better than anyone. He lived by these rules for years. He helped enforce them. He helped the organization grow stronger. Operation Black Widow began in 1997. It was one of the largest gang investigations in California history. The FBI worked with nearly 30 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. They wanted to take down Nuestra Familia's top leadership. They wanted to stop the violence. The gang was believed to be responsible for at least 600 deaths over 30 years. That's 20 deaths every single year. Investigators spent years building their case. They used undercover agents. They flipped gang members and turned them into informants. They recorded phone calls. They intercepted letters. They watched and waited. Villanueva was on their radar from the beginning. As a captain in San Jose, he controlled street operations. He gave orders. He collected money. He enforced the rules with violence. By the early 2000s, authorities had gathered enough evidence. In 2001 and 2002, they began arresting Nuestra Familia members. Dozens of people were indicted on federal racketeering charges. The indictments included high-ranking leaders who were running the gang from inside Pelican Bay State Prison, California's toughest facility. These men were in isolation, but they still controlled everything. They sent messages through letters and visitors. They ordered people to be deceased from inside their cells. Villanueva was named in the indictments. He was charged with racketeering, drug trafficking, and extortion. The The evidence against him was overwhelming. Phone calls, letters, testimony from former gang members, documents that showed he was a captain, records of drug deals, records of violent acts committed under his orders. Villanueva knew the case against him was strong. In 2004 he decided to plead guilty. On September 28, 2004 he entered his guilty plea in federal court along with 12 other Nuestra Familia members. He admitted to participating in a racketeering enterprise. He admitted to helping run a criminal organization. He admitted to drug trafficking. The judge sentenced him to 14 years in federal prison. Other defendants received longer sentences. Some got life, some got 20 years. But Villanueva's cooperation and his role as a captain rather than a general meant he got less time. But Villanueva's story didn't end there. In January 2008, while serving his sentence, Villanueva allegedly became involved in another violent incident. According to court documents, Villanueva allegedly stabbed another gang member named Pete Gutierrez inside prison. Gutierrez allegedly violated Nuestra Familia rules. The gang demanded punishment. Villanueva allegedly carried out the order. Gutierrez passed away from his injuries. Video surveillance allegedly captured the entire incident. After the alleged incident, Villanueva was placed in a facility where he could not communicate with other gang members. This created a power vacuum in the organization. Other members fought to take his place as leaders on the streets. The case against Villanueva for the alleged stabbing became evidence in later Nuestra Familia prosecutions. Prosecutors used it to show how the gang operated. They used it to prove that gang members followed orders no matter what. They used it to demonstrate the violent nature of the organization. Defense attorneys argued the evidence was prejudicial. They said it would unfairly influence juries, but judges allowed it because it showed the gang's structure and purpose. Villanueva's 14-year sentence would have ended around 2018 if he served the full term. But with the additional allegations and investigations, his time behind bars likely extended. Operation Black Widow successfully convicted 75 Nuestra Familia members and associates. The investigation disrupted the gang's operations. But Nuestra Familia still exists today. New leaders emerged. The violence continued. The organization adapted. Villanueva was part of a system that caused death and destruction across Northern California for decades. His choices led him from the streets of San Jose to federal prison and beyond.
Robert Brown Bob Viramonte spent 20 years as a high-ranking general in Nuestra Familia before he tried to walk away. He was one of the most respected leaders in the organization. He had been there since the beginning. He knew the secrets. He knew the structure. He knew where the bodies were buried. He helped write the rules. He enforced those same rules with violence for 2 decades. But by the late 1990s, Brown Bob wanted out. He wanted a normal life. He wanted to leave the gang world behind. He didn't know that leaving Nuestra Familia alive was impossible. The gang's motto was simple: blood in, blood out. You joined by causing death. You left by being deceased. Brown Bob was released from prison in the late 1990s after serving his time. He paroled to San Jose, California. He moved to Campbell, a quiet suburb. He got a regular job. He bought a house. He started working with the city of San Jose as an anti-gang advocate. He tried to help kids stay away from the life he had lived. He went to community centers and schools. He told young people about the reality of gang life. He showed them what happened when you joined. He warned them about prison. He tried to save them from making his mistakes. Brown Bob even covered up his Nuestra Familia tattoo on his back. He had a large AZ Tech goddess tattooed over the gang logo. He wanted to erase that part of his past. He wanted a fresh start. But the leadership inside Pelican Bay State Prison didn't see it that way. They saw Brown Bob as a traitor. They saw him as someone who abandoned the family. The gang constitution was clear. Article 2, Section 5 said desertion meant automatic death. It didn't matter if you served 20 years. It didn't matter if you were a general. If you left, you were deceased. The generals held a vote from inside their prison cells.
They voted to have Brown Bob taken from life. The order came down from La Mesa, the three-man governing board that controlled everything. Regiment Commander Gerald, Cuete, Rubalcaba, and Mesa member Tex Hernandez sanctioned the hit. They picked a team of 4 men to carry it out. Federal agents knew about the plot. An informant inside the organization called Red Raider warned them. The FBI contacted David Byers from the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office. Byers went to Brown Bob's house and warned him. He told him his life was in danger. He told him to leave town immediately. He offered him protection, but Brown Bob refused. He said he wasn't worried. He said nobody was coming for him. He had been out of the game for years. He thought they would leave him alone. He was wrong. On April 19, 1999, the hit team arrived. Santa's Bad Boy, Branius David Dreamer, Escamilla, Antonio Chuco, Guillen and Albert Beto. Avila pulled up to Brown Bob's house in Campbell. It was broad daylight. Brown Bob was in his garage. He was working on something. He was doing normal household tasks. The men approached him. They discharged their firearms multiple times. Brown Bob fell to the ground. He passed away in his own driveway. He was deceased because he tried to leave the gang and help kids avoid his mistakes. The hit team drove away in a Ford Explorer. They thought they got away with it, but they made mistakes. Albert Avila was supposed to wipe down the Ford Explorer and get rid of it properly. He didn't do it right. The gang found out. On May 14, 1999, less than a month after Brown Bob was taken from life, Avila was shot and deceased in the foothills of East San Jose. Rudy Night Owl Moreno was suspected of causing his death. The gang didn't tolerate mistakes. Federal agents used information from their informant Daniel Lizard Hernandez to track down the perpetrators. They caught them in San Francisco. Branius, Escamilla, Guillen and Moreno were all arrested. They were charged with first-degree offense with special circumstances of lying in wait. They faced the death penalty. Court records showed the entire chain of command. The order came from Pelican Bay. The hit was carried out on the streets. Brown Bob's case became part of Operation Black Widow, the massive federal investigation that brought down dozens of Nuestra Familia members. Brown Bob accomplished something almost nobody else in Nuestra Familia ever did. He served his time. He got out. He went home. He never cooperated with authorities. He never gave anyone up. He tried to live a normal life. He tried to help others, but the gang wouldn't let him go. They took his life in broad daylight because he covered up a tattoo and tried to save kids from gangs. His story became a lesson to everyone in the organization. Nobody leaves alive. Vincent Gerald Shente Gay spent decades climbing the ranks of Nuestra Familia to become one of the most powerful gang leaders in Northern California. He was born and raised in Salinas in Monterey County. He joined the gang as a young man in the 1990s. He earned his stripes through violence and loyalty. He proved himself over and over. By the early 2000s, he became a Colonel, which is the highest rank in the organization. By 2012, he was the regiment commander for all of Monterey County. That meant he controlled everything. Every drug deal, every act of violence, every decision. He was the boss. At one point, he was the highest-ranking Nuestra Familia member in Northern California, who was not in prison. He ran a criminal empire from the streets of Salinas. Garche operated a methamphetamine distribution ring out of Salinas' Chinatown district for years. He didn't touch the drugs himself. He didn't make the deals. He had people do the dirty work for him. He just collected the money. Prosecutors called him the chief executive officer of the operation. He lived well off the profits. His drug dealers all reported to him. They followed his orders. They paid him his cut. If they didn't, there were consequences. Garche also had connections to a string of incidents in Soledad in 2011 and 2012. Authorities believed high-ranking gang members in prison ordered these to settle old scores and take care of gang dropouts. Garche was linked to these cases but never charged. He was smart. He kept his hands clean. He let others do the work while he stayed in the background. In March 2013, law enforcement launched Operation Snake Eyes. It was a 6-month operation designed to dismantle the Salinas Valley's Norteno leadership structure. Dozens of agencies worked together. They watched Garier. They listened to his calls. They tracked his movements. In May 2013, they raided his home. They found over 300 kites inside. Kites are notes written by gang members. These kites detailed gang rules, recruitment, executions, promotions, and demotions. None of the kites were addressed to Garier. None were written by him. But prosecutors said gang members don't use real names to avoid getting caught. The kites proved Garier was running the show. One kite ordered the removal of Alberto Lopez in Monterey County Jail. Lopez survived the attack but lost his vision. He later testified against Garier to get back at him. Garier was arrested in May 2013. In December 2014, a jury convicted him of conspiracy to sell methamphetamine and committing street terrorism for the benefit of Nortenos. His attorney argued there was no direct evidence linking Garier to any crimes. He said the prosecution couldn't even prove Garier ordered a pizza, let alone run a drug ring. He said possession of written material is not a crime in America. But the jury didn't buy it. On February 20, 2015, Monterey County Superior Court Judge Pamela Butler sentenced Garier to 35 years to life in prison. It was the maximum sentence. His attorney called it vastly out of proportion. But the judge disagreed. She said Garier spent a lifetime with the Norteno street gang and had been in and out of prison multiple times. But Garier's story didn't end there. He was transferred to Monterey County Jail while waiting to be moved to state prison. From May 2013 through February 2015, Garier was incarcerated there. Even behind bars, he was still in charge. Evidence showed he controlled the entire jail for Nuestra Familia. He ordered assaults and attempts to cause death. He retained ultimate authority over gang members. He could put people on freeze status. He could clear them for rule violations. He could strip them of leadership roles. He could elevate others into positions of power. He approved all removals in the jail. A removal is a violent, organized attack on a gang member who violated the rules. First, hitters stab the target. Then bombers beat the person without weapons. The beating causes maximum damage and creates chaos so the hitters can hide their weapons and wash off the blood. Between December 2012 and April 2014, Garier approved 10 removals inside Monterey County Jail. 3 happened in the main yard. Others happened during recreational time in lockdown pods. Evidence traced Garier to all of them. On September 26, 2018, federal authorities charged Garier and 13 others with racketeering conspiracy. Conspiracy to commit offense in aid of racketeering and conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon. In June 2022, after a 3-week trial, a federal jury convicted Garier on all counts. On November 1, 2022, he was sentenced to more than 25 years in federal prison. He is now 55 years old. He will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Garier ruled Monterey County's criminal underworld for years. He caused violence. He destroyed lives. He profited from drugs and fear. Now he sits in a cell with nothing but time. Gerald Q.E. Rubalcaba was born in 1954 and became one of the most powerful and feared leaders within Nuestra Familia, a prison offense organization that controls thousands of Norteno street gang members across Northern California. Rubalcaba rose to become one of the top 5 generals of Nuestra Familia, operating from inside Pelican Bay State Prison in a maximum security unit where the organization's highest-ranking leaders issued orders to their associates on the streets. Rubalcaba was accused in court papers of ordering dozens of incidents where individuals were unalived while imprisoned at Pelican Bay, including attempts on 2 assistant district attorneys in Santa Clara County. In one documented case, Vera Montes, a Nuestra Familia general known as Brown Bob, was taken from life in front of his home in Campbell, The incident was sanctioned by Regiment Commander Gerald Rubalcaba. The organization operated with military precision from inside the correctional facility, using coded messages, secret letters, and smuggled communications to coordinate narcotics trafficking, robberies, and violent attacks across California. Rubalcaba used a sophisticated underground communications network to run offense operations. He directed followers on the outside to carry out robberies and narcotics dealing on his behalf. The organization collected money from street-level dealers, ordered attacks on rivals, and enforced strict discipline on its own members. Anyone who violated the organization's rules, cooperated with law enforcement, or showed disrespect faced severe consequences, including being taken from life. The investigation into Rubalcaba and Nuestra Familia leadership was called Operation Black Widow and began in 1997. The $5 million investigation involved agents from the FBI, the State Department of Corrections, and several local police agencies working under the direction of the United States Attorney's Office in San Francisco. Investigators infiltrated the organization with an undercover law enforcement agent and 2 informants and made secret video and sound recordings of offense members plotting offenses. In September 2004, Rubalcaba and 7 other top-ranking members of Nuestra Familia entered guilty pleas to federal racketeering charges. Rubalcaba admitted to having participated in at least 2 incidents where individuals were unalived as part of his guilty plea. In September 2005, Rubalcaba, age 50, was sentenced to life in federal correctional facility without the possibility of parole. After sentencing, Rubalcaba and the other 4 top generals were transferred to the United States Penitentiary Florence ADX, the federal Supermax correctional facility in Colorado, removing them from California, where their influence was strongest. Gerald Q.E. Rubalcaba remains incarcerated in federal custody, separated from the offense empire he helped build and control for decades.